Cool. All right. It looks like we're ready to get started here. So welcome to one of the very first introductory trainings provided by TrustedSec. So for those who don't know, my name is Ben Ten. Real name is actually Ben Malk, but no one remembers Ben Malk, so we do Ben Ten. And also on the training, we have the infamous, well-known Carlos Perez that everyone can pronounce his last name. How's it going, Carlos?
Doing good, doing good.
Excellent. Hopefully things are going well by you and your family.
Yep, surviving.
All right.
So far, so good.
Yeah, these are crazy times for sure, and we appreciate everyone's patience as we roll out some of this new stuff. So we actually have this kind of set up the way that the classes will be set up for TrustedSec. So we're rolling out a whole bunch of different new trainings that are coming out. So one of the first ones obviously is this PowerShell one that I'm going to be teaching along with Carlos coming up here in a couple of weeks. We do still have spaces available for those. We also have, Carlos is doing a Sysmon class. Carlos, do you want to quickly talk about what that class will go over in like 30 seconds or less?
Sure. In fact, the Sysmon class, we're going to go over the fundamentals of Sysmon. As many of you know, Mark Sinovich put out this great tool that is used by many defenders out there to be able to track and find malicious actors in their network. Now, the problem is that there's no documentation on it. And everything's in XML, so it's quite complex. So I took the liberty of reverse engineering a lot of the binaries, grabbing a bunch of configurations, and looking at experience from some of our customers. And we built a training to be able to teach defenders and also offenders how does Sysmon work and how you can actually leverage it.
Great, awesome. And then I am prepping another class, which is going to be designed to be like a red versus blue type of course that we're going to be giving you guys more information about that as we come up. And I do know we're doing some stuff on the web app side and some other things. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up down the pipeline. So again, this is one of the first ones. So you guys get to be the beta testers, so to speak, and let us know any feedback or whatever. So the great thing about these trainings is that they're going to be directly from TrustedSec consultants. So you'll be dealing directly with us. We do a lot of these penetration tests on a day-to-day basis, and we base a lot of our training material off of these tests. So a lot of the things that we cover are from real world examples where we've either compromised a host or we've helped an organization to become a better defender against a lot of those attacks. So during this training here today, it's not very long, right? So we have a 4-day PowerShell class coming up. I can't go through everything in 30 to 40 minutes here. So what I wanted to do was show you a couple of different things that we're going to cover during the class in the upcoming training. We're going to look at some of the offensive components that we might be using. We'll go through and look at how we can actually build a quick little port scanner. Then on the defense side, one of the things that we like to look, especially as a threat hunter, is if a system's been compromised, is knowing like what did they use PowerShell for and did they do anything malicious? So we'll show you a little bit about that on the defensive side. Carlos will just kind of interject a little bit here or there. I know for those in the industry who don't realize, Carlos has done PowerShell training for many years. And so he and I will be kind of tag teaming that class as we come up. That being said, we don't have a lot of time to go into all the individual details when it comes to PowerShell. And we also can't go super duper fast because not everyone that's on the presentation here is an advanced PowerShell user. So I'm going to try and find that fine balance here to show that. But during the class, we're going to make sure that everyone's up to speed and that everyone understands. So if you are a complete novice, no problem. But if you're still the advanced PowerShell usage, trust me, we're going to touch stuff that's going to be interesting to you as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So I am actually in my attacking environment here. So we have a special environment set up where we have our own fake domain controller and our own vulnerable systems and everything else to that effect. I'm on a box that I've completely taken control of just because they had bad passwords or whatever. And the thing is, as an attacker, I don't want to always go and download tools, right? So as an offensive person, the last thing I want to do is get caught. So I'm not going to go and grab PowerSploit or PowerView or PowerShell Empire or anything like that and try and get things to work. Chances are, especially with the state of EDR solutions and the sense of capabilities today, I'm going to get caught if I try and download one of those. So my goal is to stay under the wire as much as possible, but that means I have to actually write some of my own tools. Now, I've been on engagements where this has been the case. I got a shell, I got a system, I was able to log into the box, and this is what I've got. I've got PowerShell, and that's pretty much it. There's no Python installed. I don't want to download a bunch of other tools because I don't want to lose this. And so now this is my pivot point. So this is becoming my attacking box. So what do I do from here, right? And so we'll cover this in the class. We'll kind of go through some of that open source intelligence. But let's say we've moved on to the point where we understand what all of the IPs are, and now we want to look for vulnerable services. One of the first services that I always look for is a vulnerable Tomcat. Tomcats are great because if you can set those, you find a system that has default credentials, oftentimes that gives you a NT authority system level access, and it allows you to do much more than what your current user level access might be. So how do we do a port scan in PowerShell, right? Now remember that, yes, there's utilities and tools you can go and grab and copy and paste and whatever, but that's not very safe. Chances are you're probably going to get caught. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to write a basic and very simplistic port scanner that's going to meet our needs for most of it, right? So it's not going to be Nmap. It's not going to have all the flags and switches, but it's still going to meet our needs for what we want to do. So in PowerShell, we can define variables. So I'm going to say I want my client. And the way you define the variables is with a $sign before the word. And then I'm going to say I want to create a new object here. So we're going to say system.net. And we are going to use sockets. And we want a TCP client. Now, all of this is done is actually gone out to the .NET library, right? And it's actually created an object of this TCP client, and I'm using this variable to reference it. So there's a brand new object, it's there, it's in memory, I can interact with it. So if I want to see that a port is open, now we are using a full handshake, not a half handshake, right? It's not half open. We want to connect to it. So we can do it, we can connect to that port by saying client.connect. And so the neat thing about this is we can specify the IP address. And I already know this because during my open source intelligence, I found out that these boxes were up. So if you're not sure how I got that address, we would go over that in the class. So we know that there's a box on 10.10.152.3. Now, we are going to look at port 8080. So if I press enter, it looks like nothing happened. But in fact, there was a lot of stuff that just happened in the background. What it did is it actually opened up a connection, established it, and there's actually an active connection between me and 10.10.152.3. And we can check that by typing client.connected. Now, client.connected, if it returns a false, that means it didn't connect. If it returns a true, that means that there's an actual connection there. Now, this is an easy way for us to identify that port 8080 is open. And we can validate that by opening up our browser and go to HTTP 10.10.80.80, and there we go. We can see we have our vulnerable Tomcat system. Well, so that was great. So we quickly created a TCP connection in PowerShell, validated that port 8080 was open, but that's not super ideal, right? You don't want to necessarily have to do that all the time. So what can we do? Well, what's really neat is I can actually create a for loop. So I can loop over a bunch of numbers, scan on an entire range of IPs that I know that exist, and see if there's any other systems out there that might have port 8080 open. So I'm gonna create a quick little loop here. So I'll say for, and I'll just use IP just because it's simple. And I'm gonna start at 1. And then I'm gonna say, as long as the IP is less than and I know I don't have anything over 20, less than 20, right? And then I'm going to say if it's not less than 20, then go ahead and increment that. So that's what this for loop means. I want you to start, create a new variable called IP, set its initial value to 1, and you're going to keep running this loop so long as the value in IP is less than 20. And if it's not, when you get to this point, go ahead and increment it for me. So I'll go use a curly bracket to open this up, and I can just press enter. Oh, actually not on this one. I'll go ahead and put it up here. Let's make this a little bit easier for me. The ISE is a little bit different than straight PowerShell. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to connect to all of these IPs. So the way that I can do that is I can still establish my client. I do want to disconnect my client real quick, because if I try and open up a new connection while that one's open, it would give me an error. So I'm going to say client equals new object. And the cool of the IntelliSense, it'll automatically complete it for you. So it's kind of nice. System.net.sockets.tcp client. Now, for those of you who are ahead of this saying that this is probably not the most efficient way, you're right, but we'll get to that in just a second. So I'm going to open up my new, I'm going to establish a new client each and every time, and then now I need to connect to it. So I can say client.connect, just like we did before, and I'll say 10.10.152. Now what's cool is I can now say IP. And we want port 8080. What's neat is with PowerShell, as long as you're using the double quotes, when you put a variable inside of those double quotes, it'll actually take the value of what's in that variable and replace it. Now, if I were to use single quotes in this manner, it wouldn't. So it's very important. So single and double quotes are very different in PowerShell. So what this will do is this will go from 10.10.152.1 all the way through 10.10.152.20 and attempt to connect on port 8080. Now, the thing about this is that the way that this connect works is that if there's an issue or error or whatever, it just like throws up on your screen. So well, we don't want that because that's not going to look nice. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this in what's called a try block. A try basically, it says try this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then I want you to, I want to catch the error. I actually don't care what the error is. I just know that this is the way that this is going to work. So I'm just going to say nothing. If you're an old school programmer, this would be like on error, resume next, really bad. And we're not promoting this, but this is just a quick little way of doing this. All right. Then what I can do is I can say if client.connected, then I can say write output. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's go ahead and do this. And then we'll do a backtick : 8080 is open. Okay, so really quick, really simple type of thing. I'm just going to scan from port, from IP 1 to 20, looking for port 8080. I want to see what's going on, and then I also want to make sure I close each time so I don't leave those connections sitting open. So I'm going to create a new connection or a new client. I'm going to connect to it. I've got it wrapped in this little try block just in case something goes wrong. And then I'm going to check. I'm going to check to see this client to make sure it is connected. If it is, it's going to output that IP with that port is open. We're going to close it. All right, now if I typed everything correctly, we should get some output here. So let's go ahead and clear my screen and let's go ahead and see if this worked. Now you'll notice that this is taking a little bit of time. That's one of the big problems with this. This is very slow. The connect is going to use the full timeout on each one of these. So every IP that I go through, it's got to sit there and wait the entire lifetime of that connection. It takes a very long time. Not super efficient. You know, it works, but it's not as great as it could be. Now, I do know that it exists on 3, so you know, we should be able to do this. One of the other things that we can also do while we're trying to do this is kind of give us a progress update. We can actually come in here and let's just assign this to a variable to make our lives a little bit easier. And we'll say IP adder is equal to this. And then I can say write progress scanning IP adder. And I can even use IP adder down here. And I can use IP adder. Oops. Here. So now if I rerun this, you'll see it's starting at 1, and we've got to wait a really, really, really long time. And we're still waiting. We're waiting for that whole timeout component, right? We're waiting for all of that to actually time out. And then it should, after that whole timeout, move on to the second port. See, now we're on to 2. So it took a really long time. This is not efficient. It's very, very slow, very obnoxious. Not the most ideal way to write a quick port scanner. So I'm going to show you how we go from here to making one that's a little bit faster, that gives you a little bit more response time, and looks and feels a little bit more like maybe what an Nmap would be. Okay, so I'm going to clear this, and we're going to come back over here. Now, what's neat is because this is PowerShell is built on the .NET framework, we have the full .NET library available to us. So what we can do is in this TCP client, instead of just going straight to the connect, we can actually do something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to put this code down here, and I'm going to put up here what we would actually do. We would still create the client, right? So I'm actually going to take this and move it down to the bottom. We'll still create the client, but then what we're going to do is we're going to say connection. And this connection is that whole process of that connection. And instead of using connect, we're going to use what's called begin connect. Now, begin connect will attempt to begin the connection, wait a period of time, and then you can end the connection. So I'm going to say IP adder, and it's going to ask me for the port. And that's going to ask me for 2 other things that I'm just going to null out. I don't need to put anything else here. Okay? Then I'm going to define what's called a wait. Okay, this is how long we want to wait before we say forget it. If it hasn't responded in 300 milliseconds, it's probably not there. Let's move along, right? Now, yes, will that create some potential false positives? Sure, absolutely. You might miss a port that is open that's just slow, but honestly, at this point, I'm okay with that. So I'm going to say connection, and this is where you're going to use async wait handle dot wait 1, and then you're going to give it a time in milliseconds. And this is basically, I only want you to wait 300 milliseconds. If after 300 milliseconds you haven't actually gotten a response back, just dip out. We don't need you anymore. All right. So then we're going to say if not wait, meaning if the wait didn't actually come back as true, go ahead and close because you're not there. There's no point in you sticking around. However, if you did get something, this is where it's really, really where you can be cool. So now you can say if client.connected, I'm going to say write output IP adder on port 8080 is open. All right. And then after this, I want the client to end the connect, and we'll specify that connection. And then we don't want to forget to close the connection as well. So we'll put this at the end just to be on the safe side, client.close. Okay, so to recap on what we're doing here, we're creating a new client. We're sending this begin connect. We're assigning it to this connection. we're specifying an async wait handle, and we're putting it in wait, and we're only going to wait 300 seconds, or 300 milliseconds. That would be a long time. If the wait comes back as a false, just go ahead and close it. Just give up, move on to the next one. If it doesn't fail, then we're going to double check as a sanity check to make sure it is connected, and then we're going to write to the output that this is connected. Now, the cool thing about it is that we don't need any of this code anymore. Blink, blink. All right. So now we've gone from just basically a single connection, right? We just tested one port, one IP, created the loop. We created a full connection on that initial part, but we had to wait for that full timeout. Well, now using this, we don't have to wait for that full timeout. We can actually cancel it. If after 300 milliseconds it hasn't established that connection, we're just going to move on. So hopefully, again, if I typed everything correctly, this should work without a problem, but we'll find out. And as you can see, this is going much, much faster, and we already have a result back on 110.152.3 on port 8080 that it is open. So this is one of the things that we're going to cover in the offensive components when it comes to PowerShell, is basically how you can build your own Nmap, right? So that's the idea. I'm stuck on this box. I don't want to download a bunch of tools, but I have the ability to write my own PowerShell tool, so now I can basically write whatever I want. We're going to cover in how you can manually pull Kerberos tickets. We're going to cover all sorts of crazy stuff. So hopefully, you guys will be able to sign up for that. So I'm going to quickly switch over to a defensive component, and I want to show you guys a little bit about that. Did we have any questions on the offensive side, Carlos or Nathan or Amanda?
Oh, we only had some general questions.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's move on. So I'll let you guys screenshot this. In fact, I'll do it and I'll post it to Twitter too, just for the fun of it. So that's a quick and easy way to write a quick little scanner, see what's going on. All right, so let's move on to the defensive side. As with everything, we don't just live in one world. If you're a pen tester, you should know defense. If you're a defender, you should definitely know offense. You need to live in both worlds. So I like being in both worlds because as I build up my defensive knowledge, it also challenges me to build up my offensive skills, and vice versa. As I build up my offensive skills, then I realize I need to go back to some of my defenses and maybe tighten those up a little bit. So one of the things that we want to do, especially if we're threat hunting, right? So especially if we're looking, like we know that the user clicked the link, but we're not sure what happened after the fact. Windows event logs are amazing. They really do a great job of capturing all that stuff, especially as of Windows 10 and forward. I know a lot of the stuff is done out of the box. I have enabled PowerShell logging on this box. This box is from a previous class, so there are some residual stuff on there. I haven't actually refreshed it yet. And there are students that have attacked this box. So one of the things that we want to do is to figure out, hey, when was the attack and was there anything malicious, right? I do know that one of their payloads was where they were base64 encoding a string. So that's something that I want to see. Did they use any PowerShell scripts that say from base64 string? So how do I do that? Well, everyone knows that we have the event log, right? So you have this cool little event viewer, everything else that goes from here. So as we can see, if I look at this event here, you can see that maybe, just maybe, this is probably not the best thing to find in your event view. I mean, maybe, right? If this is legitimate in your organization, I would highly suggest that you have a conversation with that person, because this is not good. So how do we find this, right? Utilizing PowerShell. We could use the event view or whatever, but let's say we're doing it remotely or we want to do something quick and fast and simple. So how do we do that? Well, PowerShell does have two cool little things that they have. You can do get event log. Now, if we want to figure out how to use this, we can use this commandlet called get help. Right? And so we can see get event log, you can specify the log name, the instance ID, that type of thing. What I'm going to tell you about a get event log is that get event log will only access these event logs right here. If you want to get into the advanced logging, which is all of these other logs that you have within your system, get event log won't pull those in. We need to do get win event. It's a separate one. So if we do get help, get win event, you'll see it still does the same thing. It just allows us to access those other logs. Now, how do we know what the log names are? Well, we can go into here, and if we open up one of our events, which we've already done, you can see that the log name is specified right here, okay? So we have to copy this string exactly the way that it's written right here for us to access it. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to clear this screen, and I'm going to say get win event. And if you do a dash, it automatically pulls up this context menu, which tells you all of the different parameters that you have available to you. And as you can see, we have log name here. So I'm going to say log name, and in single quotes, I'll go ahead and paste this guy in. Now, if I press enter right now, I'm going to get every single log from that log source. I don't want that. So I'm just going to say max event, and I'll just say 10 for right now. So as you can see, this pulls back all of those last 10 events. And as you can see, these are timestamped, and it goes in reverse order, which means that the first event that's returned back is the most recent event. So if you are familiar with arrays or collections, that would be index 0. So at the very first index, it's going to be the most latest event. Well, these are great. It's good, but I only want specific event IDs. So how do I do that? So if I say I only want event 4104, right? That's going to give me the information that I need. So I should be able to, you know, come up here and say ID is 4104. Nope, actually, you can't. So the way that this works is that not every of the returned fields in the object that's created when you do this is searchable utilizing it as a parameter. That's why they created what's called a filter hash table. A filter hash table is basically just a way for you to specify criteria based off of the fields that are returned. And it's actually really neat. It allows you to do some searching and whatnot. So I'm going to show you how to use that, because that'll make your life a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say get win event, but instead of saying log name, I'm going to specify a filter hash table. So I'll say filter hash table. And the way you define a hash table is with an at sign and then 2 curly brackets. So I'm just going to put this like this, and that way I know that I have my open and close bracket. I'm set. I should be good to go. I'm going to say log name is equal, and I'm going to paste that guy back in there. So that's that same log name. Okay, so I can specify log name is equal to, and kind of go from there. Now the way that you delineate the individual components within your hash table is with a semicolon. So if you want to search for more than one thing, it would be, you know, you put the returned object variable name, so log name, and then a semicolon to separate it. So we know that the return value for the event ID is ID, so I should be able to say 4104. Now again, I only want maybe 10 events. I don't need every single event that comes back. So hopefully, if this comes back, we should have 10 events, and they should only be event ID 4104, which they are. And as you can see, we've got some 4104s from 58, 59, 39, 1017. This was when the class that we ran recently, this was when we did at DerbyCon, in fact. At 1017, this was when all the students were attacking the class. So I definitely want to know what the students were doing to this box. By the way, if this, this would be a box that you would take out back and burn just because of everyone's been messing around with it. All right. Well, this is great, and it kind of shows me a decent amount of information, but maybe I'm looking for something specific, right? And again, I'm telling you, one of the payloads would use this as an identifier in there. So a lot of the payloads where it'll actually bake it in, and we can look at it right here. You can see that it's got this, oh, cool, I can do that. That's amazing. I didn't think that was going to work. By the way, the way that I did that, I just held Control and mouse wheeled. So mind blown there. I didn't realize that was going to work. I don't think that works on some of the previous versions, but that's cool. So, you know, convert from base64 string. So I want to see any events in my environment that are using this, right? So the way that we do that, I'm going to go like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take off this max events, and I'm going to pipe the output object that's generated from here. And I'm going to use a question mark. And the question mark basically is a alias for where, right? Where object, right? And so I'm going to say where. And don't worry, if you're not following this step entirely, the class will actually walk you through each of these things so you'll have a better understanding. And I'm going to say where the message, I'm sorry, I have to move some of these over windows here. Where the message is like, and then I can put from base 64 string wildcard. With this here, what I'm basically saying is I'm saying where, so this is going to give me everything, and then this is like a filter, right? I'm going to say only show me the ones where the returned object message, so that's what this return is. This is like the object that's passed over the pipeline. That's how you reference it. Where the message and kind of like a contained or the wildcard, you have to use dash like, and you're able to use wildcards in here, which is the asterisk. And so basically I said where the message basically has this anywhere in it, this is what I want to see. So now if I press enter, you can see that only those events and messages that contained that string came back. Now what I can do is I can put these into a variable, right? So I'm going to push up arrow, and I'm going to say event is equal to. So if I just type events now, I get all of those events. Now remember, what I told you is that the very first one that's on the list is at index 0. So what I can do now is I can say events index 0, and it's only going to show me that first one. Well, now I can actually type dot message and see what it says. Now I think it's going to be pretty long, but that's okay. Dot message. Whee! And now we have full information on everything that's going on in that event. So this is one of the things that we can do, especially when we're threat hunting, looking for all of the things that are going on. Now we're going to build some advanced tools. We're going to build some ways that we can not only identify systems that have been already compromised, but also build your own honeypot. We're going to show you ways that you can actually trick responder. One of the best things that we have as an attacker is responder out there. I'm going to show you guys how you can actually trick that and get an early warning sign the moment that one pen tester or an attacker utilizes responder within your network. We're also going to show you different ways that you can actually build these out and actually create little alerts for yourself, especially on your high maintenance stuff. Now, obviously, if you have Splunk or whatever, you can forward these on and build your detections that way. But we're more looking at ways that we can do this. We're going to build entire libraries and kind of go through all of those things. Now, I do know that Carlos has one thing to talk about with the filter hash table. So Carlos, you had mentioned to me a little bit ago that you had given this class, and there was one thing that your students really liked to do when you did that get win event. Do you mind talking about that real quick?
Sure. In fact, when I gave my class, I had a bunch of defenders in the class, and we were talking about Windows Event Collector, and they were talking about what a nightmare it is to write the XPath filter, especially since Microsoft decided not to update the XPath filtering in their event log service for many, many, many years after they initially added that. So there's no support for wildcards. It is a bit complex. Everything has to be done in XML. So it is case sensitive and it has a bunch of other limitations, and it's a real pain. And one of the things I told them is, so why don't you just get win event to generate those XPath filters? And they were a bit confused. And told them, okay, let's generate the filter with a filter hash table, since you can specify multiple events, multiple fields, and it becomes very flexible in terms of how many different parts you can add into that filter. And once done, I told him just do tag verbose, and in the verbose message, get win event will actually output for you the XPath filter it is using in the background. And they really, really loved it. They were actually using that technique to build those XML filters that then they massage a bit, or other times they just simply use it as it came out of the output for their WEC instances, for the filters that they're using, so they can be very targeted in what information they're pulling from the host to their Windows Event Collector servers.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, so Carlos showed me that, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that existed, because yeah, XPath, you know, was not going to be something super fun for me to kind of go over. So I know that we covered these relatively quickly, but we don't have a significant, like I said, we don't have a significant amount of time to dive into all of the individual details that go into this. During the class, we'll be able to talk about what the object is. Why are we doing it this way? How does PowerShell actually treat this? Everything's objects, right? Even a string is an object. We're going to build into that. We're going to show you how that you can actually build your own commandlets, things that you can use on a reusing basis. We're going to talk about ways that you can actually get around some of the, you know, potential detections as an attacker. Showing you some cool obfuscation techniques that even go beyond a little bit of what Daniel Bohannon has created in invoke obfuscation. We're going to talk about some ways that, like I said, that you can go out and manually query Kerberos tickets and being able to pull those down. How you can do a brute force scanner, or, you know, access certain things to kind of go from there. PowerShell is immensely powerful. And again, it's built on .NET, so you do have the full .NET library available to you. And we're going to show you how you can leverage that to your advantage on both the offense and the defense. You know, all of the components and everything will be there. We'll have it set up to where you'll have the cheat sheets in front of you. So if you have questions, and then we're going to have multiple consultants in the room, so that you guys can, if you're having an issue or whatever, and you don't want to get behind, you can still do the one-on-one, kind of like if you were in a real class, and be able to raise your hand and the instructor comes over. We'll be able to actually move you into a separate room with the instructor. They'll be able to see your screen if you want to share it with them, and then they can help you out and kind of go from there. So we're hoping, you know, that it gives you a similar experience. Granted, everything's better in person. We'd love to have these in person, but we just can't right now. So we're going to do our best to give you that same experience and that same feel, and be able to give you some skills that you might be able to take out onto your next pen test or take back to your organization to increase your security posture. So I think I'm a little bit over, but that's okay. So I didn't know if there was any specific questions that anyone wanted to go over anything I just covered, anything Carlos mentioned, or if there are any questions about the upcoming class here coming up. I think there's a Q&A thing that you guys can use there. Okay, so Bill says, are there any recommended books or other resources to prepare to learn on their own? So I do know that Lee Holmes wrote a PowerShell book. Carlos, the name is skipping me for some reason. What was
PowerShell cookbook.
Yeah, the PowerShell cookbook, that's what it is.
Right.
Highly recommend Lee Holmes. Really, just a really good one. Carlos, what are your recommendations on any other books and resources?
In fact, Lee's book is actually free during the COVID pandemic. He actually made it free for people to download. In addition to that, there's my YouTube channel. I have a couple of videos on the basics that I've placed there. The other place I would say would be No Starch and Manning. No Starch has a recent book, which is not too bad. And the other one is Manning. Manning has several PowerShell books that go deeper into certain areas like DSC, WMI, and some other uses for PowerShell. Manning Publications.
Okay, and it looks like Bill has PowerShell and a Month of Lunches, which I believe Don Jones wrote, if I'm correct. You know, what do you think of that? And then he said, would you mind sharing the link to your YouTube?
Yes, let me find it right now. Yeah, month of lunches, I have to be honest, when I initially read it, I had so much experience already with PowerShell that I didn't got much in terms of value from the month of lunches. But there were
Yeah,
others, like the one for WMI that I really liked from Manning. I really love that one. The one I keep going back from time to time is Lee Holmes' cookbook. I actually
it
have
really
the
is.
version of it, and it's super thick, and it's uh, the way Lee wrote that, he gives you some basics and example. And I'm constantly going back there just to grab code that I copy, paste, and then modify to my needs.
Yeah, and it's Lee Holmes. I typed it in the main chat there.
Yep.
See if I can find a link to his book or something like that. But yeah, so yeah, Lee Holmes, and again, you know, I had seen the PowerShell in a month of lunches or whatever, and I don't personally learn that way. You know, I started out as a developer long ago, and so you know, for me, I had a difficult time with it, but I know that a lot of people like it, and I've met and talked to a lot of people that have enjoyed it. Like I said, I think Carlos and I are of the same mind that Lee's book was by far it was superior. And the cool thing about it is that it's free right now. So, you know, free. I'm going to go with the free one. So plus Lee is really good people. He's a great guy. Not only does he care about PowerShell, but he actually cares about the security industry. He cares about the tools and everything else like that. Loves what Jeffrey Snover did with the language and everything else like that, but actually has a passion for not only utilizing the tool, but utilizing the tool well.
Yep. A book that I
Sanford says,
really recommend if you want is Windows PowerShell. I think in action. There's a version of it from 2007 by Bruce Payette. I really like the original version. There's been like 3 other editions, but but I like the original because he goes into the history of PowerShell. So sometimes you're going to be working in PowerShell and you're going like, who in their mind got the idea of $_ as the array table? And then Bruce goes into deep detail telling you that they did a survey and most of the people that were doing WMI and stuff in Windows were actually using Perl, and that actually they grabbed that from Perl. And why are the operators this way? And he'll go into detail why they grab the operators from Bash and they're using those inside of PowerShell. So he goes very,
it
very
sounds like a
deep
PowerShell AMA.
Yep.
Cool. Sanford says he's not able to find the free giveaway for Lee Holmes' book.
I know he tweeted it. Let me see if I find it in his.
All right, so hang on here for just a sec. Carlos is going to go to the intertubes to try and figure that out, and then we will post that into the Zoom webinar chat here. All right.
Also, PowerShell documentation is awesome. The help system is,
looks like Shane found it.
Bar none, one of my favorites.
Here we go. Thanks, Shane. All right, so I went ahead and posted that to the Zoom webinar chat, so you guys should be able to get that. So definitely recommend that for resources, books, and whatever. I also recommend attending this class by this little guy known as Ben Ten coming up here in a little bit. If you want some cool hands-on experience, I highly recommend you guys doing that. Also look at trustedpsych.com for any of the other upcoming trainings. Carlos and I will both be there for the PowerShell training, and we'll both be there for the Sysmon. I'll be the primary teacher for the PowerShell, and Carlos will be the primary teacher for the Sysmon. But we'll be able to bounce off each other. I'll be able to lean on Carlos for his years of experience. And if you guys have any questions up until then. But it looks like we've answered all the questions so far. So if there's no other questions or whatever, I'm going to turn this back over to Nathan. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you guys. And then make sure you guys check out the new Trusted Psych Discord. So it's a great way to hang out and kind of talk with people. I know Trusted Sec tweeted that out about that. So if you guys just like to go in, just hang out. If you remember Freenode IRC, it's basically the new Freenode, right? So it's great because we have over 1,000 people in there, so it's kind of great. I was talking with a guy from Poland the other day, so be sure to join that, check it out. You guys can, you know, talk to any of us that are in there. It's a great way to hang out and kind of bounce any ideas that you guys have out there. Carlos, do you have anything else to wrap up?
Not at this time. If you also want to learn about Sysmon, that's a 2-day class. If you guys are interested, sign up for that one.
Great. All right, Nathan. Nathan, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
I think you covered it all, Ben. So thanks everyone for joining. We're going to end it now, but you can watch a replay if you want to, you know, watch it in your own time on our website. So thanks everyone. Thanks Ben. Thanks Carlos. Appreciate it.
Yep, no worries. We'll see you guys later.
All right, bye.